Yeah, I thought this was kind of fun. This was the first flight. Uh, Brought it up in stabilized mode, which I do a lot. May have even taken it into altitude hold. Looks like I did. Uh, but I hadn't taken it into loiter mode. Sometimes I take it into altitude hold or even all the way into loiter. You can only arm it in stabilized mode, but then you can go into altitude hold and or loiter, which is one flip, flip, flip down on a switch, stabilized to altitude hold, loiter. Um, and you can bring it off the ground and fly it. If you do that, especially altitude hold and or loiter, it's just going to pop up in the air real quick about the time you hit 50% throttle. I kind of do that with stabilize myself anyway, because it kind of lets the crafts pop up and get about 5 feet in the air and sort of stabilize themselves. Anyway, long and the short of it is, I can see I put it in stabilized, armed it, put it in altitude hold, and popped it up. Then I put it into loiter. As we can see, I loitered it out into the field a little bit. This is a bank, 30 foot tall or so. That's a 6 acre field where they have 2 soccer fields for the soccer leagues. After I loitered it out in the field, I put it back into altitude hold. I played with it a little bit so that, this is first free flight, just moving it around. I had, of course, intended on being very conservative with my movements. And then I went what I was really after for. I flipped the switch. Now that I had the altitude sort of under control, I flipped it into drift mode. Bink. And that's when I started getting kind of little tighter turns. Couple of turn left, turn right, right. Increase altitude, decrease altitude, those kind of things. Finally to where I accidentally got it coming at me so fast in my direction that I kind of brought it in here in drift mode. Even it was still in drift mode when I basically pulled it up 2 or 3 feet from the ground and let it kind of fall onto the ground, really. Excuse me. Then the second flight, same thing. Stabilized. Get it armed. I didn't go into altitude hold on this. I just pulled it down 2 switch clicks into loiter and pulled it out into the field on this one. I can now see. And then I tested return to launch because it had just come in and had a hard landing. Worked fine. So I revoked return to launch on its way in and used loiter mode to bring it on out in the center of the field and raise its altitude. Going into altitude hold here in preparation of changing that one switch, where you have to use the second switch from altitude hold into drift. And then I had a little bit of fun there with drift mode. I got kind of scared and did a return to launch, which worked fine. I revoked it with the drift mode. Getting cocky. Like I said, my first thing, I revoked that with drift mode, and that's when I got over under the tree, which was after I was already off balance mentally from the drift mode out. Somehow I got it into land. I hadn't even noticed that until this particular check of the data, and that's what got me even sort of closer into the tree that I didn't like, even though you can fudge land around with the control sticks. It doesn't just come straight down only. Auto mode's the only mode you can't fudge. Got it into loiter, got it turned around towards the field, came out and loiter, and sort of got nervous again from the tree. I just did a return to launch, which of course it started returning to launch. But if you can see that real quick, that sort of looks like that's going to be below. If you don't watch it, it's going to be below or too near the level of that bank top, which I didn't like. So I revoked the return to launch, went into loiter mode, and sort of raised the altitude. Oops. While it was coming towards the bank more. So another freak out, just went and returned to launch. That one, if I remember right, came almost all the way in and landed. I don't think it actually landed. We can go back and look at the video and know for 1,000,000% sure. I went into stabilized, which is a problem if you've got that switch having in here someplace between loiter right here. I switched that main switch back to the stabilized position while it was in return to launch here, which was probably a brain fart. So when I just reached up and removed the return to launch toggle switch, which is the third one, just that's all it does. That basically put it back into stabilized mode instead of loiter. And I had to hit the throttle, kind of got a little bit sliding sideways. I think that's where I went and hit loiter. Let's see if we can make out. I can't. I think I was already headed up on the throttle in stabilized mode, trying to get out of there, and didn't realize there was the tree behind me, and flipped it into loiter mode right there. And no matter what you do with the throttle, loiter mode should just give you a straight up. Yeah, something was wrong at that moment. It might have been when the motor wire was broken and one of the motors went out. And when it went up like that, I cut the throttle. It didn't matter to the platform. It was still climbing, probably again because motor wire was broken, possibly causing that motor to burn up. Could have been, no, that was... Motor wire could have been broken after it went into the bushes. That's one thing we can't totally tell. That little spurt right there of up from the stabilized mode may have just been all the heat that those motors could take from everything that had come before. I don't know. Because then if a motor or two motors goes out, which I'm not sure two motors went out at that time either, trying to stabilize itself could result in exactly a flight path like this. It's got 5 or 6 motors running. The motor across opposite of the motor that's out, they don't run these motors backwards. Most it could do, I think, is stop. Would cause the 4 motors that were left trying to level it just isn't enough. There is a system, NASA autopilot system with a secondary Wahoo addition to it. It'll actually land successfully a octocopter with 1 or 2 motors out, a hexa I think with 1 motor out, and a quad with 1 motor out. It'll successfully land one of those. Well, I think that autopilot's about $1,200 or so. I had to go with the cheaper one. So at this point, I just flipped out and hit return to launch, which again, it knew it wanted to decrease in attitude. It basically knew it wanted to arc back towards me, but with one or two motors out at that point, it's just not going to do what it was supposed to do. So we can suppose that a motor wire got pulled out here, perhaps. More than likely, most likely what happened to what I found was, this is where the motor's basically during this climb right here, when I hit the throttle, and then once it looked like it was coming up and out, I hit loiter so I'd have more control. I think one of the motors burned up right there, and I didn't really have or get control, and that's why the loiter resulted in this big long arc. And I said, screw this, let's return to launch. And because motor was out, it did not return to launch correctly, because I was flying low to start with and close to where I was standing. Nothing really strange happened, bad this time. Such be life, sometimes it works out. Taking away the loiter. Looks like it sort of tried to do it. Now if we put everything back, click, it's going to put back the planes also. I'll have to remove them. Oops, wrong one. Remove the planes and the waypoints from that one, the planes and waypoints from that one. This is your whole 9.5 minutes. Technically, I think I cut off my... Yeah, I think I cut off the 9.5 minutes. Probably 10 minutes when you go through all this. I think when I timed my flight time, somewhere in here I said, man, that's not really under my control anymore, so that's not valid flight time. But 9.5 minutes or so of good fun if you take away, at least that much of it. Yeah, that was good. Good for me. I liked it. Don't know how to use the software. Yeah. Later.